Courage, it is a word we use often, but do we truly understand its power? Most people think courage means not being afraid. That's not true. Fear is part of being human. But the one who has courage walks even when the legs are trembling. Courage does not mean shouting from the rooftops or fighting with the world. Courage means doing what you know is right, even when everything inside you says, it's not about muscles, it is not about muscles, it is about strength, inner strength. And that comes only when you're not busy protecting yourself all the time. Why do people lack courage? Because they are too invested in their identity, their image, their comfort. They are so afraid of losing something, they don't realize they are already losing their life. Every moment spent in fear is a moment not lived. But look at nature. The seed breaks itself, become a tree. The river cuts through rock not with force, but with persistence. There is no comfort in becoming, there is only courage. If you want to live fully, not just survive, not just exist, then you must step beyond the fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. The unknown is not your enemy, it is your doorway, and courage is the key. Remember, no great possibility has ever happened in comfort zones. Whether it's in love and work, in transformation, everything valuable demands something of you, and that something is courage. So don't seek to become fearless. That's a fantasy. Instead, become so conscious, so clear, that fear no longer decides your life. Courage is not a quality, it is a choice. Choose it and life will open in ways you never imagined. When we speak of courage, many imagine it as the roaring lion, the unshakable warrior, the one who feels no fear and moves like thunder. But that is not how life works because fear is not a weakness. It is a part of the human mechanism to survive. And the real essence of courage is not found in the absence of fear, but in the quiet, almost invisible willingness to move forward even when the legs tremble and the breath shortens and the heart races, yet something deeper than emotion pushes you beyond hesitation into action. You see, fear is natural. It is like the shadow that walks with light. It shows up when uncertainty arises, when the mind does not know how things will unfold, when the familiar crumbles and the unknown glares back. But in those moments, what separates a life of stagnation from a life of growth is not the removal of fear, but the strength to step regardless, to act not because you feel brave, but because something in you knows this is necessary. We often wait for fear to go away, as if one day we will wake up without doubt, resistance, without that tightening in the chest, but that day may never come. And if you are waiting for perfect clarity, perfect confidence, perfect whether to take your step, you might live a life rehearsed only in safety, never touched by the fire of transformation that courage alone can bring. Courage in its truest sense is not loud. It is not theatrical, it is silent, it is subtle. It is the quiet resolve to keep going when no one is watching, when nothing is guaranteed, when the outcome is uncertain. Yet you move because life calls you forward. And you know if you don't answer, you will remain a prisoner of your own comfort, a captive of the mind's need for protection. There is something sacred about a moment when fear is loud and logic says stop, and your hands are cold and dry, but your soul says just one step more, just one breath deeper. And in that one step, that one breath, a shift happens, not outside but inside. And you realize you are not defined by what you feel, but by what you choose in the face of what you feel. When you act despite fear, you are no longer serving fear. You are no longer bowing to it. You are no longer building your life as a reaction to it. Instead, you are building in awareness, choosing deliberately, carving the path not because it is safe, but because it is real. And in that choice, there's something in you becomes unshakable, not because fear disappeared, but because it no longer decides for you. It is only when you start living this way that you understand. Courage is not some divine gift handed to a few chosen ones. It is the birthright of anyone who is willing to feel fear fully and still not hand over the reins of life to it. It is the everyday choice to lean into uncertainty, to break the mold, to open the heart again even after it has been broken, to speak truth even when the voice shakes, to walk alone if that is what is required. And so understand this, not as philosophy, not as inspiration, but as lived reality. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the presence of something stronger than fear, a clarity, a longing, a knowing that no matter how dark, how unknown, how difficult the step must be taken, not someday, not when you're ready, but now, because this moment is all you ever have. And if not now, then life will slip between your fingers as fear smiles in triumph over the potential you never dared to claim. When we speak of courage, many think it is about domination, about forcing your way through life, about standing taller by pushing others down. But that is not courage. That is just insecurity disguised as power, because real courage, the kind that moves mountains within you, does not rise from noise. It does not rise from anger, it does not rise from the need to prove, it rises from stillness, from clarity, from that space within you where there is no confusion, only knowing. Aggression comes from imbalance, from a mind that is agitated, from a being that is restless, always fighting, always defending, always reacting. But clarity is something else entirely. It is not a fight, it is not a fight, it is not a reaction, it is a vision. It is a state where you see things as they are, not as your fears project, not as your desires distort, not as your emotions blur, but as they are, and when you see clearly, action flows effortlessly, not because you are forcing it, but because it simply must be done. Inner courage is not the result of tension, but of inner alignment, when what you think, what you feel, and what you do are not in conflict, but in harmony. And such alignment can never come through aggression, because aggression creates separation within you. It tears you in different directions, it creates noise in the mind and fire in the heart. And in that heat you may act, but not wisely, not consciously, not in a way that truly liberates. True courage is like a tree, not shouting, not demanding, but deeply rooted, unwavering, not because it fights the wind, but because it knows where it is, it knows where it stands, and such knowing only comes when the dust of confusion settles, when the mind is not racing but still. When you have looked within long enough to understand that power is not something you seize, it is something you become when you stop running from yourself. You see, aggression is always about someone else. It is a response to the outer, but clarity has nothing to do with the outer, it is an inward light. And when that light is on, you no longer move out of fear or pride or comparison or resistance, you move because there is no other way. Not because you are compelled, but because you are clear. And that clarity itself becomes your courage, not something borrowed, not something learned, but something revealed from the silence inside. And when you live this way, people may think you are fearless. They may say you are strong, but you will know it is not about being without fear or being full of strength. It is about being free from doubt. Not the kind of doubt that questions others, but the deeper kind that keeps you questioning your own path, your own worth, your own voice. And when that doubt dissolves in clarity, action becomes a gentle force, unshakable and effortless at once. So don't seek courage through aggression, don't shout to silence fear, don't harden your face or your voice thinking that makes you powerful. Instead, become still, become silent and just see what is real, see what is necessary, and from that seeing, let action happen. Not because you want to win, not because you want to conquer, but because something in you simply knows this is the way, and once you see the way, to walk it is not bravery, it is just natural. This is the power of clarity. It does not push, it pulls, it does not threaten, it invites, it does not explode, it unfolds. And when courage comes from such a place, it does not leave damage in its wake, it leaves transformation not in the world alone, but in you. Because now you are no longer reacting to life, you are responding, no longer fighting with life, you are flowing with it. And in this, there is a strength far greater than any force aggression can ever offer. Every time something truly shifts in life, every time a breakthrough happens, not the surface level success, not the rearrangement of the same story with different names, but real change, the kind that turns your life in a new direction, you will find that it never came wrapped in comfort. It never arrived through convenience. It always came with the cost of leaving something behind, whether it was an old identity, an outdated belief, a relationship that no longer served, or just the inertia of doing what is familiar, and to walk away from that familiarity into the unknown takes something more than skill or intellect. It takes courage, because the past, no matter how painful, is known, and what is known gives a strange sense of security. And the human tendency is always to return to the known, not because it is joyful, but because it is predictable. And when you start to challenge the known, when you begin to pull the thread of your old story, it unravels not just your actions, but your sense of who you are. And in that space where the old no longer fits and the new has not yet formed, you must stand naked in front of life with no script, no guarantees, only the willingness to keep walking. Patterns are not just habits of behavior, they are grooves in consciousness, ways in which your energy has learned to move, ways in which your mind has learned to think, ways in which your emotions have been trained to react. And these patterns may feel like you, but they are just the echo of repeated reactions, and to break them is not a small thing. It is to interrupt momentum, to question instinct, to sit in the fire of discomfort until clarity arises. And this interruption is never easy because the pattern will fight back, not with fists but with doubt, with excuses, with the voice that says, "Stay, it's safer here." And comfort, comfort is the most seductive prison because it whispers sweetly in your ear, It tells you nothing needs to change, it feeds you routine. It numbs your longing. It replaces the wild hunger for truth with soft lull of distraction. And in that comfort, you slowly forget that you once wanted to fly, you once wanted to live fully, you once dared to ask questions that had no answers. And if you are not careful, you will trade your aliveness for stability and call it wisdom, but inside, something will remain restless, unfinished. So when life offers you a moment where something deep inside says, "Ah, no more, this is not it, this is not all," that is not frustration, that is not crisis, that is the knock of transformation. That is the beginning of a breakthrough, and to follow that whisper, to honor that inner rebellion against mediocrity, against falseness, against the repetition of a life unlived, that is the moment when courage is not just needed, it is demanded. Not the courage to fight the world, but the courage to stop deceiving yourself. You will have to face things you have buried. You will have to forgive where you wanted revenge, and where you wanted to cling. Speak truth where you were silent. Walk alone where you wanted company. And all this will not come with a reward upfront. It will come with uncertainty. It will come with silence, it will come with nights where nothing makes sense. But if you stay with it, if you allow yourself to not know and still move, then you are no longer a slave to the past, you are now birthing the new. The ones who break through are not the strongest, not the most intelligent, not the ones with the loudest voice. They are simply the ones who are willing to break. The ones who are willing to break, to let identities die, to outgrow you, not once. And such people live in a different rhythm, not controlled by fear or history, but by a deeper intelligence, one that flows from life itself. Because when you move with that force, you are not making something happen, you are allowing something that was always waiting within you to finally emerge. And so understand, every breakthrough in life, every real unfolding will first look like a breakdown, will first feel like a tearing apart, because to make space for the new, the old must fall away. And this falling is not a failure. It is the price of awakening, it is the cost of liberation. It is the shedding of illusion, and only the one with courage, not aggression, not arrogance, but that quiet, steady flame within can walk through it and come out not just changed, but truly alive. Most of what people call courage is just a better form of defense, a stronger shield, a louder voice meant to hide a trembling heart. Because for most, life becomes a game of protection. Protecting identity, protecting emotions, protecting status, protecting the fragile sense of me. And as long as that protection is the priority, every step will be taken with hesitation, every choice with calculation, every word with fear of how it will be received. And in this state of constant defense, there is no real courage, only performance. You see, real courage does not come when you build stronger walls, it comes when you are willing to stand without them, when you are no longer afraid of being seen, no longer afraid of being misunderstood, no longer afraid of losing the image you spent so much time polishing. And when that fear falls away, not because you fought it, but because you no longer see the point in hiding, then something deeper rises in you, something untouched by opinion, untouched by failure, untouched by failure. True courage is not loud, it is not flamboyant, it is not about winning or conquering or being unshakable. It is about being open, deeply open, to pain, to beauty, to uncertainty, full range of this human experience without trying to shield yourself from. Because only when you stop protecting yourself can you truly meet life, not from the surface, but from the very core of your being. As long as you're trying to protect yourself, you will negotiate with life, you will bargain with truth, you will compromise what matters just to stay safe. But when you drop the need to be safe, when you drop the need to be right, you drop the need to be held in a certain line. Suddenly you can walk into the fire of the unknown, not because you are fearless, but because there is nothing left to defend. And in that state, courage is no longer something you summon. It becomes your natural state because you are no longer fragmented, no longer divided between what is and what you pretend to be. And in that wholeness, action becomes clear, not driven by fear, not held back by hesitation, but arising from a space that has nothing to lose and therefore nothing to protect. It is such a paradox that the moment you give up defending yourself, you actually become unbreakable, not because you are made of steel, but because now there is nothing artificial to crack, no masks to maintain, no lies to only the simple, raw, untamed presence of who you really are. And from this place, courage is not effort, it is the most effortless way to be. So ask yourself not how to be courageous, but what are you still trying to protect? What false self are you guarding? What story are you still afraid to let die? And if you can sit with that, not analyze it, not fight it, Just sit with it. You will start to see that most of your fear has nothing to do with life and everything to do with the imagined self you've been taught to protect at all costs. And once you see this clearly, once you are willing to risk the illusion of safety for the truth of freedom, then true courage will arise. Not because you built it, not because you forced it, but because now you are finally available to life. No longer hiding, no longer running, simply here fully. And in that presence, courage is not something you have, it is what you are. When you look at most lives, you will see not a dance, not a wild exploration, not a passionate unfolding, but a cautious repetition, or a rehearsal, a preparation, a careful planning of days to avoid discomfort, to avoid risk, to avoid heartbreak. And this constant rehearsal may look like responsibility or wisdom or discipline, but underneath it is often just fear wearing a more acceptable face. And in this pursuit of safety, life becomes something managed, not lived. Because when courage is absent, every decision becomes about control, not about truth. Every movement is calculated, not felt. And though you may be busy, though the calendar is full and the schedule is tight, somewhere inside you will feel the dull ache of possibility and knowing that though everything appears in place, something essential has been left untouched. A part of you that never got the chance to stretch its wings beyond the comfort zone of the known. You see, safety is not wrong, but when it becomes the master, when it becomes the measure of all choices, it silently kills the aliveness in you. It may keep your body protected, your image polished, your reputation safe, but it will also keep your soul asleep. Because the soul does not grow through what is safe, it grows through what is real, and reality, by its very nature, is unpredictable. Which means if you wish to live fully, you must be willing to walk where the outcome is uncertain. Courage is not recklessness. It is not about jumping off cliffs for the thrill of it. It is about saying yes to what calls you, even you do not know where it leads. It is about listening to that voice within that says, there's more here, and choosing not to silence it for the sake of familiarity. It is about understanding that safety may preserve what you already have, but only courage can take you to what you've never known. So many people wait. They wait for clarity, they wait for guarantees, they wait until the fear goes away while they move. And what they don't realize is that the waiting itself becomes their life, the rehearsal becomes the whole show. And one day they look back and realize they practiced so carefully for a life they never dared to live. They protected themselves from failure, but also from wonder, from adventure, from becoming something they never imagined. The journey of possibility is not marked by certainty. It is not a straight path lit with step-by-step instructions. It is a winding, messy, beautiful unfolding that asks you not for perfection but for presence, not for safety but for sincerity. And unless you have the courage to say yes, sir, to things before you feel fully ready to step forward, before you see the full staircase, to trust something beyond logic, then possibility will remain just a thought, a dream, a whisper. And this is the tragedy of a life rehearsed for safety, that you become excellent at avoiding pain but also distant from joy. You build routines that keep you comfortable but also keep you small. And while everything may seem under control, the mystery, the magic, the raw, untamed brilliance of existence stays just out of reach, not because it is hidden, but because it only reveals itself to those who dare to move without a script. So understand this not as a motivation but as a truth. You were not born to rehearse safety, you were born to risk becoming, to walk the edge of what is possible, to step into the unknown again and again and again until what was once terrifying becomes your new ground, and it is only courage, not comfort, not planning, not perfection, that can take you from the tight loop of safety into the vast open field of life as it is meant to be lived.